Okay, so this is where we left it, or rather the very start of what it was. Empty and kind of boring. Yes, we had an empty viv, and yes, I popped the foam inserts for the base, and added a build-up area, but you gotta admit, it's kind of boring. Now it sits with a foam-based build-up, with sections removed, as apparently buoyancy is a thing, so yeah, I had to pull some stuff out. But I figured no one wanted to see that, so I saved you all the agony. Behold the glorious, allegedly good webcam of much lying. It's not great, but it kinda does the job. So bear with the super grainy badness. It works great normally, but for some reason decided to go to blurry grainy mode. Don't start me with the Viv lights. When they're turned on, it's like an epileptic nightmare with raster scans all over the image. This was the best choice for sure. Anywho, the white tower on the left, which I've just picked up, is complete with a very newly made simplistic water channel, which I'm showing you now. Basically, as you can see, there's just a pot. Two holes that have been drilled in, or melted in my case. Two pieces of 6mm tubing, and the pump on the tubing into the base. That's it. It sits inside the tube. The tube has a door cut out at the bottom, like a squared arch, and the water flows into there, into where the pump is. Pump draws it up, slowly deposits it into the bucket. As the bucket fills, it slowly comes out of the two tubes. Simple, really. It does work, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, it does work. Yeah, I know I'm spinning it round. Got a bit of an OCD with regards to getting things where I want them to visualize. That piece of foam is rogue. Goodbye. Da 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 da. Anywho, right. As you can see here now, behold, another Polyprops air clay tub. Not sponsored, seriously, but it's the only thing I could find to do the job that actually had lids. So, yeah. More will be shown with regards to the foam clay in later cosplay builds. So, shelf that idea for a little bit. We'll get back to the Viv. It's going to sit around there at the front as an island. Yeah, I've got to adjust that again. Yeah, my little OCD kicking. The idea is to entice them over to the front, have it as a feeding spot, if I can work it in, or if not, you know, see how they use it. Yes, that label is going to be removed. We're not sponsored after all, but I do need it gone, otherwise it's going to get soaked later. And at the moment, it's glaring on the camera quite nicely. So yeah, that's going to have to go. Bit of foam down the back. That foam is just there to help prevent the tower from moving when it's all backfilled with gravel and other substrates. Otherwise, as you fill it, it's going to push it forward or push it backwards, and I kind of need it to be roughly where it is. But yeah, the polyprop lid needs cleaning off. And yeah, so initial looks, you may not be able to figure out, it's gone. Yoink. The plan is where that island was, or rather is, because here it is again, without the lid. Well, the lid's there, but surprisingly, the sticker came off very easily. But the idea is, where that is going to be an island. And from the island, I'm intending to have several bridges or walkways or fallen logs or whatever you can think of that are just going to be sat so they can move backwards and forwards. Animals can get to and from the little island at the front. I just didn't want to have a straight cut. Aha! The elusive foam. Just checking how far to place it back versus the foam underlayer and where the rocks are going to stand. Yeah, running it across the front of the tank has two purposes. One, to illustrate how high the water level could be at maximum. Basically the height of the foam. But also to wipe the fluff from the front. Spotted some bits of fluff? Had to go. So yeah, it's just a case of me trying to stand a piece of foam up that's refusing to stand up because it's not actually 100% level. But there you go. So, what do we got? We have foam. Foam attacks the island. It's like a Mad Tokyo movie. Yep, nicking out a bit of foam. Basically, I opened the foam for the filter barrier and was basically not impressed at all. It turns out the foam I ordered that was supposed to be the same dimension as that piece there that I've just put down. Turns out, not so much. It was a lot thinner in nearly 80% of the foam because it had been compressed during transit. And I've had the foam for quite a while and it will not spring back. Basically, it's not the same quality as that foam there. Allegedly it is. Allegedly, it's also the same rigidity, the same density, and the same method of construction. But a closer look at the cells, it's not at all. So I will not be ordering this stuff in future, but it will do for this project. It will work. Just checking the positioning of the rigid piece. But as you can see, the bit that I put in there for a second isn't as uniform by any stretch. And yeah, look at that. Wibbly wobbly flattened compressed foam. Doesn't stand straight, doesn't have a straight edge, even though that's actually off the edge. The flat edge is actually on the deck. It's threatening to slowly fall forward. It's slowly falling forward now. Look, it's on the move. But yeah, it's not as dense as the other stuff. The other stuff's kind of a little coarse. If you grip it, you can feel it rubbing. That stuff's soft. So yeah, I'm not ordering that stuff again. So, as you can see, the first rock has just gone in, and that first rock is to hold the foam in place. Just that. Aha, the mesh, the dreaded mesh. Yes. Right. This is substrate mesh. You normally place this over your wet substrate, or if you want to isolate and separate layers for whatever reason. But this normally goes underneath like your soil, things like this, soil, peat, whatever substrate you're using. It's actually an exoterramat, but yeah, I thought I'd have a quick look now to get a rough idea how I'm going to have to cut these things, because I am going to have to cut some of them to get them in, because if I'd have had a straight line across, if you look on the bottom and in front of the island, between the front of the glass, there's a glass section which is basically water. If I'd have just kept it to a straight line across, these would have been fine, because I could have just laid two down straight on top and a couple of offcuts on the left where the tower is. That would have been fine. But no, I decided to have a bay and a separate little island. So yeah, I'm going to have fun with these later. Yeah, I keep putting it in and taking it out and putting it in and taking it out, and yeah, I need to leave that alone. So, here we go. Ba, 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 ba. Oh, yoink. Da 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 da. Oh, it's gone quiet over there. The tank that you can see at the back, on the far side of the camera, that's actually a millipede tank. There's quite a few different species in there, various sizes, from the giant Burmese down to there's 3 or 4 additional varieties in there, up to sort of like 3-4 inches long. Some of them are about 5, sort of olives. Really nice little things. I might do a vid on those at some point, but they're kind of nocturnal. I can't get them out in the daytime. Basically, they just don't like it. So every time I pull a light out, they just go and hide, which is weird. But then again, I suppose Oh, you're not going to see much of that tank soon. Once this foam gets put in place. So yeah, at the minute I've just cut a few more foam sections and I'm just layering them in just to get the front layer done. I've just got to get them set up roughly where I need them, and then I'll pin them in place with rocks. Well, at least that's the plan. Oh, bit of slate there. Oh. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Do 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 do. I know this isn't very exciting. But yeah, if anyone wants to poke fun at me on this, this is fine. But yeah, I know this isn't particularly interesting and it's very laborious and it's going to possibly bore some people to death. But I was asked by several people, in fact I was demanded by one, to do this step by step and not speed through it. I'm like, what? Hey, why? You do know a lot of this is going to be waiting for me to move stuff around and just not. You know, whenever you're making something, there's dead time, and ideally you want to not show the dead time. No, I had people make me promise to include the dead time. So I apologise ahead of any dead time I haven't cut out. Yes, I have cut out quite a lot, but this to them is relevant. So, here we go. Actually, something relevant. Right, the foam's in place. A rock is at the front anchoring it, so it can't be pushed forward. So it anchors the foam in place. Behind there's a gap, and we're backfilling the foam with gravel. The idea is gravel is easily movable, fills all the gaps, and is dense enough to be able to hold against. So basically it's got a solid at the front, lots of smaller solids at the back, holds the foam in place nicely. The water will happily pass through the gravel. Hell, it's why we've been using gravel as substrate in fish tanks for as long as anyone can remember. It does the job really well. There's a reason people use it for drainage and irrigation, etc. Things like French drains. You know, gravel. So the foam's going to be there as a blocking layer. It's got several purposes. It acts as a filtration, so bigger things don't come through. So the animals won't get through into the gravel and the lacquer substrates, and they won't potentially end up stuck where the pump is. But it's also a case of it provides a microbiome for bacteria to live on to help get rid of the crap in the water. Obviously that'll also happen with regards to the gravel, but it'll also happen with regards to the lacquer, and lacquer is basically clay balls, and their surface area is huge because they're clay, they're porous. So in a way it's another filtration media as well as this foam. So it's all going to help. And once the bacteria is established, it should keep the whole tank clean for a very long time, because effectively 2/3 of the substrate is just one big filtration. Instead of having like a small filter that you take out and clean every week or so, or just basically wash out the excess, take half of it out, wash it, flip it. Instead of doing that manual routine, the tank should look after itself for a very long time. But I can also, from the tube, at the bottom of the tube there's going to be foam, and I can pop that foam out if I need to, clean it, put it back in. And even if I meticulously clean it, it's going to have zero impact on the actual biological media, because the rest of the biological media is the other 95% of the tank. So, fingers crossed, all this goes to plan. So as you can see, I'm just backfilling. I figured I'd have a chat instead of silently watching me pour gravel in. I had to take the sound off this. Several reasons. One is the neighbours. Two is things flying into the window. Yes, we get window strikes a lot where I am because we have a nice row of trees with wood pigeons and doves and owls and everything's nesting in there. And daily we get 2 or 3 bird strikes. So somewhere in here there's at least 2 airstrikes. I figured, no, I don't want people asking what's just knocked itself out. So, yeah, plus there's, at some point during this, a guy 2 doors down is revving the crap out of his motorbike, so I figured, nah, no one needs to hear that either. It's one of those, I'm off to work now, I'll rev my bike for the next 3 or 4 minutes, and then slowly pootle to work. It's like, could you just not, it's not needed. It's more a case of letting everyone know he's leaving. But yeah, so there's no sound. I may put some music on it if you're that way inclined. But I don't think we need to hear the sound from this. Plus, there's phones ringing and everything else in the background. Nah, you're good. So yeah, all I'm doing here is literally popping rocks in, anchoring it, and backfilling it, making sure it doesn't go anywhere, because this needs to be secure, it needs to be stationary, because this is going to form our wall. So the water goes on the right hand side of where the foam is. Obviously the substrate goes on the left, and the water will flow through this barrier by whichever direction it decides it wants to go, and end up where the tower is. Yes, that's me indecisively trying to figure out where to put these rocks. I mean, these rocks, incidentally, weren't actually for this project. They're for a tank that's about a third the size. It's another Viv, and we kept dragging our heels on putting it together because I wanted to get this one done. So instead of actually just getting on with it, I waited to do this one first, and then realised that I don't have quite enough rocks to do this by the end of it. So there are little gaps on the top sections, but once it's completed, it doesn't actually look that bad. Plus, I'm aiming to pick some more bits up later to cover those gaps. But yeah, there you go, gravel base layer. Oh, the additional reason behind the gravel, which I'll admit to, not shy. I put the foam base in, thinking, oh yeah, this will be fine. Not thinking, right? So the base was put in, everything was fine, everything's fine, looks great, ready to go. And then I was like, hang on a minute, if I add water to this, it's foam. It's closed cell foam. It's not like the filter foam that we're using here. It's closed cell. As you can see, it looks solid because it is. I took a small piece and tried to sink it, and then realised the mistake I'd made. The amount of foam that I had on the original build, I couldn't actually sink it. It was just too buoyant. So yeah, the whole thing at the start about buoyancy is a thing. It is a thing. It's a very real thing. And yeah, it kind of messed with my head a bit. So I had to take my trusty knife and start cutting channels. And yeah. So I need slightly more gravel. That's all I need. But the idea behind the gravel as well, other than using it to shore up, because originally I was just going to fill the base entirely with lacquer, which is the clay balls. But then I was like, hang on a minute, if I do that, I'm a bit concerned about the top of the Viv substrate shifting, because the clay balls are only going to stay statically in place if they've got something seriously rigid to hold them back. as the weight on top increases, it'll cause them to shift and push the front out. So effectively, we could have had a collapse where the foam and the rocks in front are just not rigid enough or not solid enough to hold back the weight of the substrate placed on top later. So I decided to switch to gravel, but I also decided to switch to gravel in a small amount to actually weight down the foam, because lacquer weighs nothing. And I was like, I tried to weigh down this piece of foam, and I used a lot. It was a lot of gravel just to make it slightly sink. I was like, hang on a minute, this is never going to hit the deck. And the other thing is, if you notice, the tank is sort of like 5/6 has the foam base. Now the foam base is only 2 mil. It's not much. But even that 2 mil actually proves difficult to sink unless you cover the entire thing evenly. So it was a case of I need enough gravel to weigh it down. And then when I looked at how much foam there was in the tank, that wasn't going to happen. So hence the channels were cut. So as you can see towards the back left, if you were to look at the front of the original foam from the early picture, you'll see that there's a lot of foam missing. And it had to be done. There was no two ways about it. But it does make a... To be fair, it was a good idea to remove it, because the last thing I needed was to get to the end, have it all set up, and then put the water in, and slowly watch literally the earth rise. That would have been the worst case scenario for me, because I would have lost my rack at that point. At the point when you're looking at something, you're thinking this is going, it's doing the job, it's going well, this is amazing, and then when you actually check it out and you realise that, wait a minute, I've made a boo-boo. I've made a big-ass mistake. And there's not really much coming back from this one. At the point where you have to dismantle your tank to correct a mistake, it's so disheartening, and it's so soul-destroying. You don't really want to do that. So, yeah, hence all this faffing around with gravel. And... more gravel. All the gravel. We do have a lot of gravel to put in. It's not much, to be fair. It's only a small tub. I ended up going down to the local builders merchants and picking up a massive bag of gravel. Because gravel, for those of you who don't know, gravel is super cheap and very, very useful when you come to doing aquarium builds. Even if you're not having it as your main substrate, it's handy for weighting things down. It's handy to, for instance, if you have a pot and the pot's slightly buoyant, even just a handful of gravel in the bottom's normally enough to sink it. Just coarser substrate with lighter substrate over the top. You may never see the gravel, but it's there weighting things down. In this case, it's needed. And obviously, if you ever decide to do anything outside and you have problems with plant pots that always seem to get tapped when you walk past them and they wobble, pop a handful of gravel in the bottom. They ain't going nowhere. Sounds stupid, but it works. And it's cheap and cheerful and does the job. But anyone who's done aquariums from sort of like the 70s through to sort of like, I don't know, mid 2000s, before everyone decided to switch to using fine sands and different coloured sands, dyed resin block, things like that, you'll find that gravel's been a staple throughout the industry and throughout the hobbyists. So that's why I used it. It's reliable, something I've always used. But yeah, enough about that. Gravel is gravel. Gravel is cheap. Gravel does the job, and it's heavy. So yeah. Well, that's the other reason behind me having the foam on the base of the tank as well. I didn't want to scratch the crap out of it, but I also didn't want to potentially drop a rock on the glass and crack it. I've done that before with fish tanks. It's not fun. Admittedly, the rocks are much heavier than these ones. You're talking like 6, 7, 8k. But yeah, I was like, no, I'm going to take my time with this, and I'm not going to just bung everything in. Hence the long video. Yeah, again, I apologise for the length of the video. There are several people to blame for this. Well, they're not to blame, they requested it. But if anyone wants to play the blame game, blame me. Because I catered. And I must admit, I was like, I've cut a load of stuff, a load of dead spots, a load of me getting a box, unwrapping it, taking the pieces out. And it may have taken like 5 or 6 minutes to locate box, but I've cut all that stuff out. Because you don't need to be sat looking at a blank screen. When nothing's happening, it's bad enough every time I go to find the new rock, it's another couple of minutes. But yeah, I foolishly agreed. But they're my mates, and they deserve better. they deserve it. They requested it. You know, people who support the channel, people who I've known, and people who just in passing said, "Oh, I wouldn't mind seeing that." I'd listen to them, and the result is, unfortunately, for people who want to just whisk through this for a fast setup, yeah, they're responsible, but they're more than welcome as far as I'm concerned. And to be fair, it's kind of cathartic. It's kind of nice to look back at what I did and sort of like sit through it and sort of like, okay, I remember when I did that. That was a bad idea. Or, oh yeah, I messed up there. I'll move that in a minute. Aha! Right, that rock won't stay where I need it to, and it's perfect where it is. So I have a little bit of the old aquarium safe super glue. In it goes, good old cyanocrylate. Although, as you can see, my sausage fingers are having problems holding the rock where it needs to go for 3 or 4 seconds. Get it in the end. Get some more on there. Could never have enough. Da 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 da. I'll say you state. No, don't touch it. Oh, too late. Do it again. The fun, the fun. No, don't glue your finger. Don't glue your finger. Oh, ooh, lucky. But yeah, for anyone who has problems, sort of like landscaping and stuff, yeah, a touch of glue does help. Back in the day, it used to be mountains of sealant, but then you're looking at curing times, stuff like that. This is just so much easier just to get things where it needs to go. Yes, the rock's been taken out because I decided at the end it's going back in, but it needs glue on the actual rock so I can actually position it properly. So there you go, it's back in finally. And no, seriously, it's back in finally. And now we'll just tap that button piece in. Right, so there we go, that rock's in place. All that hassle for that one rock. And to be fair, yeah, from my position, you guys are looking from the side through a webcam that is grainy as hell, and it's really weird. I think it's the light. Initially I put the lights on and it just went into strobe city. It doesn't like the frequency given out by the LEDs, so there was no way of actually recording with the actual tank lights on, which is a shame because the tank lights are fantastic. They're a timer set of lights where you can ramp up, ramp down. You can literally set your dusk, your dawn, your midday high sun, things like that, and it'll ramp up and ramp down accordingly. So you set them all up and let them go. So you get a constant day-night cycle in the tank, which is wonderful. No coming down in the morning, forgetting to switch the tank on, turning it on, watching everything go when you get a nice sort of like sunrise and sunset going off. And there's even moonlight settings on it as well, which I did abuse, and they do look fantastic. But the problem is I had to turn that off, and then the lights in the room are fine, but that glare is the camera. Because obviously my skin's not that white. A minute ago that wasn't there, then it was, and all it is the light in the room is minor. And to be fair, from the angle the light is to the Viv, the light doesn't get through. It's more of an ambient thing. All that is a small amount of light that's coming through from the window, and it's causing it to glare. And yeah, but the mad thing is, the webcam's fine for general use, but you stick it in a slightly darkened area, and it has that weird kind of pixelated oil look. Yeah. But for the sake of showing some people the rough process, hopefully it'll do the job. That's me faffing with the glue again, trying to make sure it stays put. Go on, sausage fingers. Don't knock it off. Don't do it. Well done. So it needs a little touch here and there, just hold it in place. Because there's other things to go in yet to anchor it down later. So it'll all be secure by the end of it. Right, we have yet more rocks and more foam and plenty more things to put down. It's a bit of a shame that some of this takes so long. I just need to move some of this stuff out of the way. There we go. Goodbye. The island came in, the island came out. Right, what I'm doing here is I've just measured up the island as to the height, and the height of the island is not quite enough. So we've changed it slightly. Basically, the lid at the top, if it's going to be a flat island so things can stand on it, it needs to obviously be at a point where things can get onto it and it not be in the water. The problem is with where it was so low down that it was going to end up waterlogged. But the other thing is the pot that's being used for that one was actually an isopod pot. I had an isopod colony in there breeding up to feed the vampire crabs, and all around the top, just underneath the lip, there's hundreds of holes for breathing holes, and I needed to keep that out of the water as well as keep obviously the top out of the water, unless I wanted a swamp. So the solution was use some of the flat rocks and lift it, because originally the slate that's in front of the tank at the minute, the flat piece, I was going to use that. Then I thought, nah, let's have something a bit more bulky, a bit more aesthetic when you look at it from the front instead of just a flat piece of slate. And that does the job well, hence the sausage thumb. So yeah, that's going to be the new blinding white light. Oh look, that rock's stuck. Oh, and that one's, yeah, that's stuck as well. Nice. Hence the yeah, bit more glue just to. I'm paranoid that one's going to go walkies. Yeah, there you go. Rocks in place. Oh, wobbly island. So the island's going to be there. Obviously, if I just put that in water, it's going to float. So, creative use of gravel. I will kill that buoyancy with gravel. But that will be down the line when water's put in. At the moment, it's just a placeholder to get a good idea where things are going to go. There's no point putting it in situ until, it's ready to go. Plus, when I come to fill the rest of it, that's going to be in the way. So it's going to have to get a shot at some point. So there's no point getting it all dressed up, set up. Plus, I don't think I want it transparent. I think I want to put something in it or around it. But we'll come to that later, because there are things that need to be done later, and some of the materials may be very useful. Just slotting some more in there. It's all a bit wobbly at the minute, but once the back's filled up and it's evened out, it'll have a nice solid thing to push against, so it'll even itself out. Do 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 do. More rocks. So there we go. Yeah, I decided that was not going to go there. I figured we'll use something different. How about a different shaped rock? How about that? That looks cool. Not so much. How about that way? Maybe not. Nah, let's not do that one. How about over there? I'm sure we can get it there. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe flat, maybe lie down. Not sure about that one. This is the problem with having a limited number of rocks, because I'd bought enough to do a 45 cube and ended up with a 3-foot cube, a 3-foot by 18 by 18. It's like, and then instead of having, if I'd have had a flat front, I wouldn't have needed as many rocks. But me, I decided to have this bay thing with the island, so I need like an extra, what, foot's worth of rock. So I shot myself in the foot by deciding to not do the basics basically. So I should have bought some more rocks, or at least gone out and looked for some. But there you go, that's just me making mistakes. And that's one of the things people wanted me to do the whole thing for, is so that the mistakes were included and I didn't cut them out. So yeah, thanks for that, guys. We wish to laugh at your errors. Well, there you go, laugh all you like. Oh no, the island has fallen. Yeah, there we go, get it out of the way. It's in the way of the camera anyway. So, creative placement. You know, it would have been nice to just set this up beforehand, but that would have been cheating. I did promise that I would do it as I did it, so that people could see the process, laugh, go, what the hell did you do that for? Why did you do that? Well, that looks naff. That looks okay. You know, it's literally watching the process from my point of view as I fumble around, and then they can pick fault. It's a good plan. It's a good plan on their point, on their part. And now we need to finish the base layer of the gravel off. I think most of the rocks are in place at this point. It looks like it. Oh no, the tower moved. Am I gonna spin that back? No, it looks fine. Oh wait, no. Ooh. Da, 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 da. I mean, I would really like to speed this up. I would really like to just take it and go, ooh, fast forward. or play it on fast speed or something. But I did promise, because the argument was I'll fast forward it and you can slow it down, play it at half speed. And the argument was, oh, I don't know if I can figure that out. It's like, oh, okay, I'll humour you. I'll do it so you can watch it normally. So again, I apologise. It's not really an apology, to be fair. It's more a case of this is the reason it's happening. Deal with it. But yeah, here we go. Right, I forgot to put foam in. I need, at the bottom of the tower there's that little, well, I say little, it's quite a large cutout, which is basically the inflow for the pump. So what I need to do is cut a foam section that is going to sit in the doorway, basically in the archway, and that'll basically capture particles that are going to be too big for the filter, because it's only sorry, for the pump, it's only a small pump, as you saw earlier right at the start. It's a really tiny pump. It's variable, but it is a small pump. But the bottom I also need to cut out a foam section for. So what I'm doing here is cutting out a foam roll to put in, and I'm leaving a flap. And the idea is the foam flap goes into the tower, and the back piece sits in the mouth. So the idea is that the foam, the actual filter, isn't sat right on the deck. It's actually sat on top of the foam. It also means that I can then pull out that foam insert if it needs cleaning. As I said previously, I can clean it, put it back. And it also means that the filter, the pump, which has sucker pads on it, won't stick to the floor. Because when I do this, pop the lid off, when I take out the top to maintain the pump when it needs to be maintained, I don't want to be fighting it if it's stuck to the bottom, because that'll just start either pulling the foam up, or if the foam isn't there, the glass. So the idea is have that foam insert, because it's the same as the front foam. It's porous, it's spongy, it can't stick to it. So it's going to be sat on top of a bed of that. It's only about half an inch thick. It's not much, and the pump weighs nothing, so it's not going to compress it. But it's just enough to keep it off the deck, and it also increases the flow around the pump as well. So here we go. OCD. I'm going to move that tower again in a minute. And now I am. Because I've knocked it. Oh, the island. Put the island back. Right. More gravel. Right, so this is where the rest of the gravel goes in. Now, if anyone's wondering what that tub is, the thing I'm using to backfill with is actually a capture tub. That tub there, with the little holes, three look at that. 3 columns of holes, or 3 rows of holes, set in columns, that's probably more right. Basically it's a capture tub. They have little tiny, hold that steady, get the gravel around the back without it, so I can then push it up against and keep it solid. Those capture tubs are amazing. Kids normally have like little jars with holes in and stuff like that, or little like, you can see if you look at the island, you can see the little tiny dots underneath the lip where I'd actually melted holes in to act as breathing holes for the isopods. Well, they're already on those boxes, as you can see whenever the box comes in, and they're triple layered, and they all come in various sizes. So if you go out, into the garden, you're looking for bugs as kids, you can just sort of drop them in, and the tops are actually hinged, so they've got a small hinge section, so you can lift the hinge, pop the bug in, close the hinge, and they're perfectly breathable in there, not a problem. You can examine your critter, job done. But in the trade, they use them for breeding boxes, for things like roaches, isopods, you name it, invertebrates mainly. They're absolutely brilliant, and they range from sort of like 3 inch, roughly. Yeah, it's about 3 inches square, to sort of like ice cream tub size. And they've all got hinge lids, and the lids on the smaller capture box, like these small square ones, all the air holes around the side, because the idea is for smaller critters, tiny holes, things can't get out. For larger stuff, the holes are actually in the top, they're in the lids, and they're quite large, so you can always block them with a bit of cotton wool, so you can still get your airflow. But I picked up a load at an entomology show, and they're very, very useful. So I ordered a load more, and it was the first thing to hand. When I came to do the gravel, I was like, damn, I need to go get a jug or something. And I was like, hang on, if I use a jug, I can't get everything up, because it's a curved object trying to lift off a flat base. I'll never get corners. And I was like, you know what, I'll just use one of these boxes, because I can just scoop a corner, clear it out, next corner. So yeah, these boxes are invaluable in more ways than one. Very, very cool, very, very handy, and have fulfilled multiple jobs now. But as you can see, the tower's moved slightly in its positioning as the gravel's gone in, and I don't know if I'll spin that at all by the end of it. I'm not sure. I may do, I may not. Oh, and here we go. Ooh, look at that. Da, 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 da. It's time. Gravel's all being shored up now. And what I'm doing is I'm shoring up the back of the foam just to basically make sure all the weight and support to keep the foam in place is there. I'm not going to take all the gravel away from the back, obviously, because I need to weight the foam down for the buoyancy issue. But that's what I'm doing now. I'm just poking stuff. And yoink! The island has gone. But yeah, the island's gone. Why is it gone? Because it's kind of in the way. So what's next, I wonder? Because this will be the moment we've all been waiting for. Could it be? Aha! Balls! Right, these are leca balls. Or just leca. It's just clay. Clay balls. And I have a thing about smashing that tower at the minute, don't I? So yeah, leca balls. They don't come in that tub. That's just a tub I happen to have lying around. Which is actually quite a handy tub. It's actually a sourdough pretzel tub from Costco, if anyone's wondering. And there it is. Woo! Good old pretzel company. Sourdough special. I just asked them if I could have a tub. And they were like, why would you want a tub? And I was like, well, you're going to recycle it, aren't you? And it's going to cost you. So if I take it off your hand, that's one less one to recycle. And they're like, okay, fair enough. You can have one. And they were like, well, why do you want it? I was like, well, I want it for basically breeding shrimp. And they looked at me, gone out. I was like, well, no, seriously, it's a good tub for it. It's transparent, so I can keep an eye on them. It's got a good volume. It's got a sealable lid. I can just drop air, heat, light, or whatever into the lid if I need to, and it's sealed. And they're still looking at me like, what are you on? But then again, I suppose if they're not into keeping stuff, then no. That's the tower for the smaller one that we knocked up. Same principle as the bigger one, only it's in a sealed container, so I can just lift the whole thing in and out. Although that's not viable once everything's in position, because if you lift it up, substrate falls in. But the option's there. It's just an easier way to do it. And that is an old fish flake tub, believe it or not. It's just been decorated up. Same principle. Exactly the same layout, to be fair, only it's a single outlet instead of two. But yeah, the sourdough pretzel thing, the idea was I was originally going to place into the tank fairy shrimp, but due to the lifespan and having to get them to breed, I was like, you know what, I'm going to end up having to do them in there, transfer them in, and have to keep transferring them in. And I was like, So the tub was originally picked up to do a shrimp colony, to either act as feeders or just to look pretty. And then I decided, oh, these leca balls need to go somewhere. They'll do. Just sort of offloaded them into that. And yeah, that's how we got the sourdough leca container, which has done its job well, I feel. It will probably eventually be used for shrimp, to be fair, because it's just a handy tub. It's quite rigid as well, surprisingly. But as you can see, all the leca goes in. Much leca. And obviously the box is used again. Oh, get that bit of leca up there. Try to keep it all on the substrate layer and not in the water area if I can. Although it doesn't matter. Do. So more backfilling. It's not a case of backfilling now, it's just a case of getting the rest of the balls in. So you just scrape the rest out. The smaller tank that was going to be put together prior to this one being done first is actually on top of this tank currently. Yeah, that's why you'll see it go dark, and then there'll be a couple of bits of lacquer thrown in. That's me scooping the lacquer out that I just tipped into the tank to get a rough idea how much I'd need, and then I've ended up taking every piece of lacquer out of that tank to throw in this one, plus all the extras we had, and there was bang on enough to do the tank. So I'd picked up enough to do the tank, unfortunately not enough to do the small tank. But I have since picked up, I think it was 80 litres of the stuff, which has ended up, well, it's 50 litres, but it's ended up after being washed and basically cleaned down. It's worked out a bit more like an 80 litre box that's full. So considerably more than I needed, but fine for planting stuff outside. So it's all good. Yeah, get that lacquer in there. Bang it all in. Yeah. So it's just a case of clean the top tank out into the bottom tank, or top viv into the bottom viv. And yeah, lecker. Do. Come on, get that lacquer in there. Oh, 3 or 4 balls and some dust. Oh, I'm sure it was worth it. But yeah, you get the idea. We throw the lacquer in, that's the top layer. And then after this, we need the stuff I was faffing around with at the start, before I started putting the gravel in. Come on. I'm such a slowpoke at this, aren't I? Yeah, professional have been straight in, bang, 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 and done by now. But then again, they'd have also only shown you the relevant parts. So, bear with. I've got to stop apologising for stuff, because I'm not going to apologise, because I promised people I would do it this way. La 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 la. So, wonder what we have next. Oh, there's definitely motion going off. There are shadows flitting around. Ah! See, note the leveling and stroking action. Yes. Means we're getting ready to do something. Everything's being leveled and stroked out flat. It's for naught though. You'll see later. Yeah. Well done. You've got that far. It's for nothing though. Yeah, I kind of made a boo-boo, and I'll explain that later. But yeah, anyone who remembers the first video where I explained step by step what I was going to do and what I was not going to do, I explained what was needed, how it was going to go in, what steps were needed, what things were supposed to be placed at each level and layer, and I even had a step-by-step guide. I actually had the thing is, while I was doing this, I actually had a guide. I actually had a step-by-step written down, and I looked at it and went, cool, started it, and I'm all the way to here. Amazing. However, remember earlier how I got this this mesh mat out and started to try and measure it up, and then realised, oh wait, no, that's later. Yeah, I've kind of done the same thing now, because later on I'm going to find something, and I'm going to kick myself, and you're all going to laugh, and I've had to leave it in. Whereas if this was a professionally produced piece, it wouldn't be in. It would be long gone, and maybe on a bloopers reel. But yeah, we'll laugh at that when we come to it. At the minute, all I'm doing is marking down where I need to make incisions, to basically cut, to slide the mat back so it's up against the glass, on the back of the tank basically. So little incision there. So it'll wrap around. La la la. And then there'll be some offcuts, some bits and bobs to lay around the back later. But the question was, do I cut around that curve? Oh yeah, that's a white marker which decided to stop working. I was like, oh, I'll use that so I can mark out where I need to cut. No. No, you won't. So I was like, I was originally going to cut, and then I realised that no, I'm going to have to fold this. Now, it seems stupid doing it this way. Not cutting it, because you're thinking, you could just get a template, cut it, job done, and just drop it into place. Yes, I could, but the problem is it's woven, and that means that the edges would fray, and you don't want the whole edge fraying and everything falling into the water. Trusty rock, hold that into place. So it's literally a case of fold it around. I mean, being double layered doesn't make any difference. If anything, it just helps prevent substrate drop through it even more. Gives a little bit of support, I suppose. It's only minor, but doing it this way means I don't have to cut anything more than that, the incisions that are needed to fit it around things. Another rock! Now that's that slate I was originally going to use to stand the tub on for the island, and then thought, nah, you know what, I'll use the more aesthetic looking thing. It doesn't look it from this angle, but from the front it looks much nicer. Okay, I'm trying to attack the camera with the mesh. Extreme close up. Drop that rock back down. Anchor it down. Stop messing about. Just put the rock back. Stop faffing. I do this a lot. Okay, right, I've decided that no, that needs to be moved around. Here we go. Here we go. Eventually I'll arrive at a shape I like. But yeah, the idea is to go across the entire surface, get all this anchored and in place. And then, oh, there's a little incision. Oh no. Because the idea is to keep it from fraying, but I do actually lose it a bit. And I do this so I can flip it around. Because it's not a plain ball basically. So incision's made so I can actually make the fold, because it just wasn't having it. I just went, you know what, I'm not fighting this for the next 20 minutes. Let's just do that. That works. Brilliant. Right, get on with the next section. So yeah, this is me. This is you watching me make mistakes and try to fix them. As I said, as I promised, I was going to leave this stuff in so people can laugh heartily. And another incision. That's it. And that's purely so we can hold things flat. I mean, looking back on it now after having done the whole process, I don't think it was that much of an issue, because once weight's on top of it, it's flat anyway. But it's just the initial trying to get everything in place, and possibly the OCD is kicking in, trying to get everything where I want it, and if it's not, doesn't quite look right, you know. But then I just go, you know what, that'll do. And move on to the next piece. I'm like, you know what, I'll give up with that. I'll just move on to the next bit. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll move things around again and faff and yeah. Oh, here we go. Out come the scissors. You know what? I've had enough of you. You're coming off. Snip, snip. What I said about the fraying, yeah, this could be an issue down the lifespan. But hopefully the substrate and additional matting will solve this issue. I just lost my rag with it and thought, you know what, I have scissors and I don't want to be here all day. So yeah, there we go. That's me losing my rag and finally deciding, you know what, I have tools, I will use them. There we go. And that's me now thinking, I should have just done that to start with. And then the offcut pieces are actually being laid at the back, because obviously round the tower, at the back of the tower, there's no actual piece laid down over, and the same down the side. So the offcut pieces that I've just taken off there are used to lay down the back. So the back actually has a matting. Otherwise, down the back of the tower, I'm slowly going to lose substrate over time. There we go. Now that's a smaller mat. That's designed for, I think it's a 30 by 30 viv. You literally just drop it straight in the viv and it fits perfectly. So as you can see, that's a 30 by 30 and the tank is 45. So there you go. So that more or less fits where it goes. However, me being me, I'm like, oh, but this stuff at the front is not being done. Now, I did buy a few of these mats. By a few, I went overboard. I figured I'd probably need 3 mats. And I need another mat for the other one. I'd probably get another one spare. Maybe 2 spare, just in case. I ended up buying an absolute buttload of them, because I found a place that sold them for next to nothing. Normally they're between sort of £6 and £11, somewhere around there, for these mesh mats. And I found a place that was doing them for well under half. So I was like, oh really? And if I buy more of them, I get a cheaper deal, and I also get some free. Okay, so I'll have multiples of each. It worked out that I bought what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 or 10, and it cost me the price of 2 mats. So I'm like, yeah, well, that was worth it. Sweet, I can afford to make mistakes. So you know, plus future vivs, because this isn't going to be the only viv that's set up for these guys. We already have a small viv set up, which is a 30 by 30 by 45 high. That's ticking over with these little critters in, but it's too small, to be fair. If there's only like 1 or 2 in there, it'd be fine, but it's just too small. I'd like to have something a bit bigger. You can put more stuff in, they can have more hidey holes. So the idea is to minimum size 45 by 45 by 30 high, because they don't necessarily need the height. It's more a case of the hidey holes and a bit of substrate. Oh, there we go. The matting has been prepared and done. But yeah, the 45 by 45 cubes seem to be the base standard for what I'd consider using. Ah, what was that? It's coconut fibre matting. There we go. A staple in many hobbyists' cupboards, be they hanging baskets or making random things for pets. They are very handy for doing things like backdrops, because you can just get the mat and you can literally cut holes in it and attach pots and wrap pots. And coconut fibre is fantastic stuff. It's really long wearing as well. It just doesn't decay very well. Oh, I say it doesn't decay very well. It doesn't decay quickly. I do remember having a sheet of that in a fish tank at one point for shrimp, and they loved it. Unfortunately, over time, they literally picked every strand of it apart, so the bottom of the tank just ended up like a straw bed, which they liked even more. But yeah, the idea is for this matting is the mesh will do the job, but yeah, I was like, I want something a bit more rigid, just to try and hold the soil away from the mesh, because the matting will take moisture. It'll allow moisture transition quite happily, but it'll also help to keep the actual soil out of the water, because if any of the soil touches the water, we're just going to get a massive soak point where all the water is going to be drawn up, and we'll end up with a section of the tank that's just sodden. And the only way to fix that would be to pull that section apart and raise it up out of the mesh. So the idea is to put this down to add a little bit of an extra layer on to bump it up a little. It's only like 2 or 3 mil, but it should be enough. That's the thought anyway. So all we're going to do is we're going to measure this up and cut panels. There we go, like that. Cut that corner off. Cut roughly to the shape of the corner, and we've got an offcut that we can place somewhere else. The cool thing about this is if you have any left over, you could literally just throw it in the matting pad on the bottom of the tank. So where we're doing at the minute, we're doing like this layer. If you have any offcuts, you can just leave them on there. It's not going to make any impact, but it also helps for like where that mat is at the minute. At the front, there's the outcrop where my hands are at the minute. You can just put the offcut there, which surprisingly enough, I wasn't stupid enough not to do. So that works. There we go. Oh, knocked a rock down. I'll pop that back up there. But that's the other thing. When you don't have water in the tank, things drop. They drop fast, and they cause damage. Another reason for having the foam base. So if you were to drop a rock on the glass in air, it's going to drop faster. In water, it's slightly cushioned because obviously it's denser, so it doesn't hit with the same impact. So that helps. So in the minute, if I knock anything, it's going to just drop straight onto glass. So I could actually have filled this partially with water, but I'm just being lazy. Plus there's no point having water in here till this has been sorted. It's just an added inconvenience to fight with. Leave it there. Get with the next bit. So that's 1/3 done, and if I remember rightly, the roll of this stuff is just over 3 feet. So it's bang on the right size for this. It's just that it needs to be popped into sections for easy in and out. So there's a bit of an overlap, and it's perfect. One roll of this is perfect for this tank. But it was another one of those. If I buy one, it's this much. If I buy multiples, it's actually cheaper than buying the one. And seeing as I have multiple tanks to do, I ended up with 3 rolls. Seems to be a common theme, as all the matting has proven so far, and the boxes and sphagnum moss. As you'll see in later videos, sphagnum plays a big part in a lot of setups. And when I buy sphagnum, I don't buy it in little bags. I don't buy it in sort of like handfuls or 1 litre. I buy a box full, basically a string bag. It comes as sort of like a massive. It's like, oh, hello. It's quite a heavy bag, and the remnants of the setup is currently sat in an 18 litre box, 18 litre really useful box, so it's aerated. So the moisture is kept in the box, but there is actually enough of breathability from when the box is closed for the organisms in the moss to stay moist but also breathe. So when you get your sphagnum, it's an idea to pop it in one of these boxes and then leave it for a day or so, and then if you've got animals in there, you can see them. So if you have things like slugs that are inside the sphagnum, what will happen is they'll come up for air and they'll come over the top of the box lid. They'll crawl between the lid and the box, and you can just see them around the box, and you can just take them out if you don't want slugs in your tank. Admittedly, if you've got frogs and things, maybe you want the slugs in your tank because they'll get eaten. But you know, it's just one of those handy things, handy little thing I found out, which has actually been very useful. But there we go, fighting that matting. Go on! Cut it at a stupid angle. Well done. Now take it out and do it properly. Yeah, that didn't work, did it? Oh, that's so haphazard. Should have cut with your other hand, shouldn't you, really? Take it out. Or we given up and decided that'll do? Yeah. Take it out, cut it properly. Um, yeah. It the it seems really daft because you think you got loads of room in this sort of setup, but the problem is directly over this tank is the framework for where the other tank's sitting. So at the back you can see the millipede tank, or where the millipede tank is. Just off to the right, where the rocks are placed, between the tank and the coffee table, there's a leg going up. Now that's the support leg for the middle of the stands. And there's one at the back, and there's one halfway along the back of the tank as well. And above that, there's a 3x2 frame. So I can't actually take the lid off the tank. And even if I took the lid off the tank, it wouldn't make any difference because the actual tank would still be in the way for me to actually get in and actually, for instance, to raise my elbow to be able to cut evenly. So you're kind of in a very restrictive space because you've got to remember that the height of this tank is only 18 inches and the door is probably only a foot high. So I'm working through a foot window. It's 3 foot long, but it's only a foot high. So you're kind of restricted on movement. And even if I took the lid off and had the doors open, I still wouldn't be able to do it because of the brace and also because of the top tank brace. So, yeah, it's kind of make do as best I can. Hence the reason the permanent marker came out. So I was like, you know what? I'll just roughly clip where I need to go, and that will do. I will work it from there. And hopefully I won't make such a pig's ear of it. Here we go, and it goes. Chop, chop. As you can see there, just under the pipe, you can see the Exoterra symbol from the rear on the mesh. Because weirdly, that was the bit I cut off. Glows in the dark, that sign. Looks quite cool in the dark. But it's supposed to be under substrate, so... Oh no, didn't look what I was doing there, did I? Right, so that more or less fits around there. We'll just tidy that up, make sure it does fit. And then we'll have to turn our attention to the front section. Come on, you can cut faster than that. That's the other thing as well. Because my hands are quite large-ish, scissors tend to be really awkward to use sometimes because I can't actually put my fingers in the holes properly. Yes, we're there. Right, golden. Let's get on with this, yeah? Take that rock out of the way. Oh, maybe I've got to go back and do another adjustment. Ooh, maybe more cutting is involved. But yeah, the other thing is cutting things like coconut fibre with scissors. Yeah, it works fine as long as your scissors aren't on the way to being blunt. Yeah, most scissors end up getting used to cut things like card and paper, and that blunts them really fast. So yeah, it's not ideal. That's it, flip it over, get the right way around. Well done. You've got a corner and a curve, but you have to make sure it's flipped the right way around, or it's not gonna fit to the back of the tank. There we go. And here's me cutting backwards. So I mean, I can't get my hands in to actually just cut the curve. So it's a case of guess where the curve's going to go, give it a rough cut, see how it looks. Trial and error. It's the way we learn. It's the way we make things work. And botch it, Bob. You know, it works. As long as it's not hurting anyone, it's fine. So eventually, I managed to cut this. Honest, I do. Here it is. Yay, there we go. It's roughshod cut, that'll do. It fits for the most part. Just need that corner bit trimming off. That's it, drop that rock on top. There you go. You can get a good look at that bit sticking out there that needs cutting off. Go on, give it a cack-handed trim. Alright, I think I'm just laying in the pieces of matting over the back now, behind the water tower. Because obviously I've got those I've got the pieces of mesh that were cut from the front right that are at the back at the moment covering the lacquer, and then I've got some of this stuff. There we go. Got it, man. Got it in hand. That's going to basically go on top of the mesh, or the mesh is just going to be placed on underneath it, and then it's going to be placed down because it's quite a tight fit. As you can see, I end up manipulating this way too many times to get it to fit, and then when I finally get it in place, I'm like, yes! And then this is where the folly will come in, and you'll all laugh. You'll all be like, haha, you idiot, you should have followed your list. Yes, I should have followed my list. Yeah, I'm prepared for the guffaws, the chortles. Yes. But like as I promised, I wasn't going to cut any of this out, and I wish I had, because I know it's coming up. Because things I'm taking my time to make sure everything fits more or less as I need it, so I can get on with it. And let's take a step back now. Once everything's more or less in place, and I've punched the tower a few times, and I'm like, yeah, that'll do. That's good enough. That'll do. And then I kind of yeah, you'll see in a minute. It's not fun. But yeah, the other point about having this matting down is soil and general substrates tend to be small particles, and although the mesh is kind of close, so it's small hold, the soil would over time just slip through. I mean, any small particles will drop straight through anyway, and especially if you've got critters that are burrowing and disturbing it. I mean, the crabs won't burrow. They do burrow, but they don't burrow enough. But if you've got things like worms, wood lice, well, basically isopods in general, and other small critters that do burrow, then over time your substrate is going to settle down and it's going to drop, especially as they eat some of it. So the matting prevents that, because no small particles are getting through that matting because it's solid. It is porous. You can breathe through it. It's difficult, but you can push air through it, which means you can push water through it, but you're not going to push small particles of soil through it. So it's perfect for a capture, which is why you sometimes find this as inlay inside hanging baskets, instead of having like a polythene bag or a plastic thing with a couple of holes in. You get these pre-made in basket sizes, and they're brilliant because they don't deteriorate very well, and they allow water to escape, and they provide something that's natural that roots can grip to as well. And they look all right, better than a bit of plastic. But yeah, so there you go. That's the logic behind the matting. However, this pains me. I know what's coming up. Okay, I'm just going to cat-handedly cut that last piece off that was sticking out, so it looks a bit neater. I'm more or less happy with that. And now here comes the fun bit. Oh, God. Right. Did you see it? On the right in front of the tank, swinging. That is the thing that's mocking me. That's the offending article. It's also known as the one thing that's needed to make the entire Viv function as a comfortable environment for the crabos. And as you can see in the reflection, I'm untangling it. Oh, God. Right. If anyone can cast their mind back to the first Viv vid, there's something I had to put in, and I had to put it in because it was vitally important. I had to put it in because I wasn't going to have an aquarium heater, and I wasn't going to have, because for the aquarium heater to be useful, it needs to be in the water where the water's going to be flowing. Now the water is going to be flowing regardless, but I don't want it in the front of the tank where you can see it. And in order to put it in the back of the tank, I'd have had to have had some sort of accessible box that I could actually either change the temperature on the thing, or be able to maintain it if something goes wrong, or swap it if it blows or whatever. So I was like, I'm not having an aquarium heater in here. Plus it's overkill for the tank, because there's only a fraction of the tank with water. I mean, if that was a full tank of water, yeah, I'd have the heater in, and it'd be hidden behind something or in a location that you're not going to really notice. But for this, the idea was not to heat the water directly, but to have it draw heat from the substrate. So as the water passes, it'll pick up the heat. I mean, the mechanism was going to be heat where the lecker balls are, get that nice and warm. The heat will radiate up, and obviously it'll get pulled along in the water flow as well. Well, yeah, that list I said, right back when I put the gravel in, when I used the gravel to shore up the filtration, that's when this step should have been done. Can you guess what it is yet? It's there dangling loosely. Looks like a piece of flex or cable. Right now, much swearing is being had, because I've just realised that I've got to undo everything I've just done, because I's an idiot. And I didn't follow my list, which I'd made specifically so this didn't happen. The little plan of action was made so that this could all be done in one stretch, so this kind of thing could be avoided. But yeah, anyone who knows me from the gaming channel or from other projects, I tend to overlook things. It's not overlooked as in sort of like last minute, oh, maybe I should put this in. No, it's a case of I planned it meticulously and then forgot. I just scanned down my list and ignored it. Now, if you see on the lecker right at the back, there's a little snake-looking thing. There it is. Oh, yeah. It's going to keep coming for the next. Here it comes. This is a heating cable. This would normally be under your substrate, or in this case, in the water, in the substrate. Now, I've used this in the past for fish tank setups. Brilliant. I've used it in the past for millipede setups, where this was laid right at the base and the heat radiated upwards, so it was nice and warm at the bottom, cooler towards the surface, and it worked fantastically. However, this needs to be where the gravel is. That little black mark on the cable's the point where the heating begins, where the element starts. So as long as that's buried, I'm fine. However, you're now going to see me fumble trying to get a very twisty cable that's got a mind of its own into the lecker and make it stay there, bearing in mind lecker weighs nothing, so it is not going to hold it down. And every time I move another piece of the cable, it's going to move the front bit, and I start to get a little bit annoyed. So, over 8 foot of heating cable has got to go into a 3 foot tank. So it's going to need to be coiled around the substrate in a kind of loose spiral. But the cable's just been cleaned. It was given a final wipe down before getting put in here, just to make sure it was, fully clean. It was clean before, but it's been sitting around for a month or so. So I thought, I'll give it another one. It needs to be snuggled down, way down, where the gravel is, and the lecker piled on top. So, here we go. This is the old gravel box, and guess where most of the lecker's going. So I've got to now spoon out all the lecker. So, micro box to the rescue. And yeah, bear with me. Mistakes are being made right now. La di da di da. Whoopsie whoopsie. I did gun da da dummer. I hope you like this out there. I hope you're laughing your butts off right now. I know two people will be. You gits. I promised I would leave the mistakes in, so yeah. Enjoy yourselves. Knock yourselves out. So yeah, I made a big boo boo, and this boo boo is a time consuming boo boo, which I have to leave in because I feel like I lost a bet. I haven't, but I do get the feeling I somehow lost a bet, and that's why I'm doing this. Um, but no, I made a promise. But yeah, this is frustrating as hell. Because that, like I say, I planned this. I planned it to go the right way, and you would not believe the amount of I'd say incandescent rage. I just was not impressed with myself. I made all the plans, all the drawings, all the lists, the steps, and literally, it was just out of sight. I couldn't see the cable. So when I came to do the gravel bit, when I came to get the lacquer, I couldn't see the cable, so it didn't enter my mind. Even though I had that checklist, because the cable was not visible, because it was blocked by some other crap that needs to go into the tank. I believe it was the matting. Um, I just didn't. My brain just didn't click. So yeah, hence I end up having to do this, and oh, it's so disheartening. Now imagine if I'd have got to the point where I'd put the soil in. If I'd have put the top substrate in and then realised I hadn't put the heating cable in, I think I would have totally lost it. Thankfully I discovered it now while it's easily fixable. At the point the substrate was in, it would have been a total breakdown of the tank and probably me, if I'm honest. Because up until now, it's taken quite a while to get this far since I'm doing it all in one run. Um, that's not including the bits I may have cut out. Yeah, I know. I cut out dead space for the people who wanted me to do all of it. If it was dead space, it got cut out. Quite literally, if nothing was happening because I was off to find something, or the doorbell rang, or the phone rang, or I desperately needed to get a drink. I obviously didn't put that in. That was all removed. But yeah, I am being honest insofar as everything that happened that was relevant is in here. And as you can see from... That's a lot of cable. It is a lot of cable. But it's perfect for this, for what I needed to do. So, I am now going to wrestle with this damn cable, which Spaghetti Noodle just does not want to do what I want it to do. I keep trying to anchor it down there, and it's about now I think that I realise that, oh yeah, I've got foam under there, there's no substrate, that's why it's moving around still. And I leave it, because I'm like, I can't anchor it, because it's literally on top of foam right now. I'll throw a bit of gravel over there, yeah, that'll do. Anchor, don't move. For all the good it does. So, cable. Make sure it twists the same way as the cable wants to twist. These are really weird cables. They're brilliant because you can coil them, and they coil naturally. And they're really, really loose. They're quite lank, basically. So when you come to coil them, they'll always coil in a certain direction. Not a problem. And they're more than happy to go that way. Like, just flip that over and it naturally made a curve. It'll do that, and then when you try to coil back on itself, it'll happily let you do it. But the problem is, if you rotate it in even the slightest degree, if you rotate the wire, all of the wire goes, no, I'm going to move. And you'll probably see that, or you might pick up on it. It's frustrating. It really is. So when you're trying to sort of like push it into substrate, because it's had a slight twist, all the rest of the wire on both ends starts to go, "Wait, it's movement time, dance!" And yeah, so yeah, I get kind of frustrated doing this, but it has to be done. It needs to be done for the setup to be done properly to the method I'm looking at and how I want to set it up. This is not a case of it'll do. It's a case of it has to do. It has to work. This is how it has to be. So yeah. Damn cable. And no, I will not be known as the cable guy. Stop that. So here I am. Yeah, that pause there was me kind of like taking a quick kind of damn it. Quick breather. But yeah, well, back in there, poking the bit we'd already put down, and yeah, in with the rest of the danger noodle. It's quite a it's a very, very flexible cable. I quite like these cables. The only problem is they might be really flexible. They're just really, really irritating to pin down. Because normally what you do with this kind of cable is you have sucker pads and you have clips. And you put the clip in the sucker pad and you put the sucker pad onto the cable. You decide where you want it on the glass. Because normally this sort of thing is used for under gravel heating sort of thing. So you'd figure out where you want to put it and you'd sucker pad it to the floor or the side of the glass. And that part of the cable, you can travel through the clip obviously, but it's anchored. And then you just go around and you put your clips down in whatever pattern you're going to do, and the cable just follows the pattern because it's clipped. But I don't have that luxury because it's nothing to clip to. So I didn't even bother getting the clips out because it was like, well, what's the point? It's going to be in substrate. There's nowhere to anchor it to, and hence me having to fight the moving danger noodle. Da, 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 da. I mean, as long as it's under the lacquer, ideally. And this is where again I realised that hang on, I'm trying to push it into foam. It's not going to go any. That last on the left hand, the last sort of like push, it ain't going nowhere. Oh yeah, that's foam, doll. So yeah, frustrations kicked in. Now, try and do it again. Look, it's it's solid foam there. It's not going to go in. But yeah, we get it more or less in place as long as it's under the lacquer and not at the top of the lacquer. Ideally, where the gravel is, on top of the gravel, under the lacquer. But I'll settle for as low down in the lacquer as I can manage, without emptying the entire tank, because I'd literally got to the point at the hit right now where I'd gone, you know what? If it works, that's fine. That'll do. Because yeah, the will to live was leaving me. That piece of rock that's falling onto the front glass there, I just move that back, and that'll be from when I pushed that cable in. It would have just flipped that rock across, I bet. So in comes the box of lacquer, or rather here comes the refill of lacquer, and we're going back the way we came. So we've gone forward so far, we've re-round, we've come back. So we assembled it so far, then we took it apart, put a bit in we forgot about, and now we're putting it all back on top again. So look, stop messing with the cable. It's fine, leave the cable. Da, 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 da. Oh, I left a bit of mesh in there. Oh, that's not good. Take that out before we bury it. Right, here we go. Here's the box of lacquer, and it just fits in the tank, so I'm going to take the lazy way out. There we go. We'll do that and we'll smooth it out. Because, yeah, that's a much quicker way. Smooth it left, smooth it right, or was it smooth it right, smooth it left? It's a case of yes, okay. Don't know why I didn't use my hand there. Because it would have been much easier, wouldn't it? Instead of scooping. I don't know what I was thinking there. Would have just been easier to smooth it with my hand like I'd done in the first place. Right, let's have a look, see where this goes. Put the box down, use your hands. That's what they're there for. I don't know why I suddenly got averse to using my hands to do this when all the way through I'd done it. I think it was a case of keep my hands off it so I don't disturb the cable. There you go, the cable is at least buried, although that bit near the tower's a little high up. We'll give it a bit more burial. There we go. Now I use my hands. What? I'm back to the box again. I don't get what I was doing there. Oh well. It's done. The cable is sunk. Look, there's no trace of it. You'd never know I made a mistake. I could have just cut that in. And the mistake would never have been known. But I'm being honest. So, apologies on the time. But you're welcome for the honesty. Yeah. People make mistakes when they do stuff. And I don't see why I shouldn't admit to mine on this. This is just... I mean, for me, it's such a big mistake as well, because it would have been one of the things I would have obsessed on making sure it was in. But it's been a while since I've used the cables, so it never entered my mind, to be fair. And not having it in line of sight meant that I'd totally forget anyway. So now what we're going to do is we're going to place everything back on top. Now this won't take long, because we've already pre-cut everything. Everything is already set up to size. So this should be a doddle. It should go on pretty sharpish, he says. Just putting those offcuts down the back. Fighting with the offcuts, trying to put them down the back. Go on. Get all that stuff down the back. Oh no. What am I doing? Oh, I was getting the cover bit for it. Fair enough. I was getting the matting to go on top of it. Put it down as one. But I know I'm going to fight that, aren't I? Because it's a weird fit. It is kind of a tight fit down that side. It's only about an inch, inch and a quarter. And because the mesh is surprisingly... It's flexible, but it surprisingly wants to stay rigid. So when you try to fold it down the side and then have it expand to form, it's almost like a little it's almost like a drain pipe, or guttering. It's almost like that kind of shape, sort of like sat there. It tends to, because it's strong enough to do it, when it tries to straighten out, and then it ends up at an angle just wedged in instead of actually on the deck. That's why I put the matting on top of it there to try and hold it down. And then it was just kind of place. Aha! It's finally done it. Bit awkward, but it's finally got there. We got there in the end. That's all that matters. We are getting there still. And there's that other bit for the back. Ping ping. And it goes. And jobs are good 'un. Da da da. Go, go, go. See, I could speed this up, but... right, next time I do this, I'm not going to say yes. I'm going to say maybe, and speed stuff. So yeah, it's just a case of replacing everything and me muddling back where I was before and realising I probably got the wrong piece on the wrong side, or, you know, it's just trying to get everything back where it was. And then once we're more or less set, find El Trusty Rock, wherever El Trusty Rock is. Doop doop doo. Oh, maybe I didn't use a Trusty Rock this time. Maybe I just decided to do the other side instead. I did, and there goes that rock again. Pop. Little lecker. Yeah, that end rock, that needs to be anchored better. Every time I touch that end, it's just dodged down, hasn't it? That'll do. It doesn't have to be totally overlapping the foam. Because basically I need the critters to get in and out of the water, because they need to get in and out to molt. The thing about the vampire crabs are they live on forest floors, and they live areas where there are little streams, and then when they shed, when they molt, they need to be able to submerge in water. Now, obviously, if they're hanging around with streams, they can just drop into a stream, molt, come out, burrow and harden, and then go about their business. When you're doing a setup for these guys, they need water. They absolutely have to have water, and it has to be deep enough for them to shed in. So normally you'd be looking at sort of like twice the leg span, ideally. So if you say 3 to 4 inches, that's enough. You don't need to have like a, I don't know, have a 3-foot viv 18 inches high and have it like 10 inches of water. That's overkill, unless of course you're planning on having the crabs high up and a lot of waterscaping. They don't need a massive amount of water, but they do need a little bit of depth. And obviously they'll eat stuff in the water as well. They will hunt for stuff in the water. I mean, they're opportunists. If they find something they can have, they'll have it. Same if it's on land. If there's a cricket wandering past and it's slow enough, or little bugs like isopods, for example, or if there's some fruit that doesn't move fast enough, so, you know, they'll have it. But the foam will be very handy for them to climb up and down if they can't go straight to the rocks. Same with the matting as well. They can hang on to the matting as they go down. I mean, there will be plants and stuff added in on the water's edge to facilitate them getting in and out as well, in addition to floating plants. And mosses possibly trailing in as well. So they'll have plenty of ability to get in and out. It's whether or not they can be bothered. That's the big issue. Can they be bothered to do it? Because there's also going to be a small pool and a stream, or a small pool with a drop down fall, and there's going to be a stream running through as well. So they may actually just go to the stream, but the stream's not going to be deep enough for them to actually molt in. So they'll obviously have to follow the water to find the deeper area. So the plan is that they will use the front section, the section to the right of the camera, there's going to be water to molt in and hunt in, and the streams will just be an aesthetic thing. And the same with the little pool, more of an aesthetic thing than a functional thing. Although they can use the pool. I mean, when it's set up and stuff, hopefully it'll be to their liking. But at the minute, we're just making sure all the lecker balls are where they need to be, all of the matting's where it needs to be, and we're just cleaning up the front of the tank a little bit, getting all the lecker that's flopped out back where it needs to go. And we're almost done. We are almost done. Here we go. So, the matting is down. The rock has been replaced for the 3rd, 4th time? Something like that. I'm going to knock it down again in a minute, I'm sure. Yeah, that back rock. It hasn't scratched the glass yet. That much I'm sure. So, what's that black stuff going in? What is that? Could it be? Yes, it is. Substrate. Right. We're now at the point where it all pays off. Yeah, I know it's been a long haul so far. So what I'm doing at the minute is I'm just bucketing in substrate. So the mat's overlaps. So let's just anchor that down. There we go. And obviously just spread it around enough to anchor everything down. Make sure everything's overlapped so nothing's falling through. And at that point, we're golden to start doing stuff. Compact it ever so slightly. Right, this substrate. Yes. this substrate. It's a substrate that has been actually on the grow. Yeah, I know this is going to sound weird. It's been on the grow for a while. It's a mix of volcanic growing substrate, burrowing substrate, which is better known as spider soil for anyone who knows it, and if you're into spiders and inverts, it's normally classed as spider soil. And the way it works is the particles allow the creatures to burrow easier, and it maintains burrows. So if you were a spider and you had say if you had a trapdoor spider, for example, they could literally make their burrow, and it would hold. It wouldn't, like normal soil, it wouldn't just collapse. It's pretty good stuff, to be fair. I mean, I've got it in the millipede tank mixed with some other bits, but they love burrowing through it, so it's great. Also mixed with it is ground and forest floor mulch, which is literally sort of like your leaf litter, your bark, little twigs, little bits of chunkier substrate, I suppose, and actually harder substrate too, because obviously bark versus soil, it's a bit chunkier, and it's all been mixed together in roughly equal parts. So one part to one part to one part. Then that was thrown in a very large container, which contains enough to do this tank and the other tank and some more. And it was mixed together, and then it was separated, and various vegetables and fruits were cut into it. So there was basically food for animals in there. There were isopods placed in there. Not isopods, sorry. Oh, you know what? My brain's not. They're not isopods. Springtails, that's the word. Springtail culture was placed in there, so that they eat rotting. They are very good detritus cleaners. So a layer of vegetables are placed in there, and rotting vegetables, and then the rest of the substrate is placed back on top, along with the culture. And that was in one of those really useful boxes where the airflow exists because it doesn't fully close, and that was left. And quite some time later, it was opened and turned over. Not a trace of the vegetable matter, because it had all been broken down and incorporated into the soil. And we had a fairly reasonable population of springtails. Basically, we didn't have. It wasn't a case of you open the box and get attacked by them. It was literally a case of you could see here and there them moving around. It wasn't like it was a mass colony, which is what I want. I don't want to put in substrate which is so heavy with them that your whole tank ends up just white, because they'll be all over the glass, floating in the water, because they've got a thing about committing suicide by jumping in water, and then they can't get out. So you end up with a film of springtails on top of your water, and if you've got nothing in the water that eats them, they just die there. It's like, oh, if they can't get out, they just die on top of the water, and there's not a lot you can do about it other than fish them out daily, by the hundreds. So the idea was to get a very, very minimal population going, and it worked. It worked really well, and the substrate's a nice kind of spongy feel, so it is really quite okay. I mean, it may look like soil to you there, but it is actually 3 different types, and there's also some bits of sphagnum mixed in as well, and sphagnum helps to keep the moisture levels kind of consistent. It actually holds moisture really well, so that moss is really, really good for invertebrate setups, as well as decorating wreaths, etc. But yeah, as you can see, I'm just basically piling this substrate up now, kind of pushing it up towards the back slightly, just to try and get a little bit of a kind of drop down towards the water. anchoring the rocks there so that the substrate doesn't just collapse straight into where the water's going to be. Although those rocks may move. I may change my mind on these. But for the time being, it's just a case of something to shore things up with while I decide what I'm going to do. Just to get an idea aesthetically what looks nice, or what looks like it might do the part. And then stuff will obviously be rearranged. You know, basically the stones and slates are being popped down where there are higher build-ups, just to prevent the rolling of the substrate. Just basic initial shoring up, scaffolding, if you want to look at it that way. If you notice where I pushed down there, the whole thing dipped. Now that's because the lacquer shifting underneath, and I'm trying to not put the pressure on if I can, because when the lacquer moves, it pushes the front out, because there's nowhere for the lacquer to go other than to move another piece of lacquer. So it's like having a handful of marbles. Or if you have a bag full of marbles and you push the marble on the top, all the other marbles will shift. That's basically what's happening underneath right now. There we go. So up around the tower, we're building. I mean, that tower is what? It's about 12 inches, 11 inches maybe. And the idea is to get most of that covered. So the substrate's got to go around the back of the tower. Otherwise it's just a big drop down to matting. So I need to put that down the back of the tower on both sides, as well as build up the front. And the idea is to try and conceal the tower a bit, so that you don't just see a big white pipe standing up like some kind of water sentinel spitting water in two directions. That's the plan anyway. So it's just a case of keep picking up the substrate and popping it across as we go. So just a case of that's it. Shunt it round. That's better. Because there's still plenty more things to add. So it's not like it's a 2-minute job and then job done. No, there's a lot of soil to add. So rearranging bits of slate here and there, just to sort of like have the edge of the water not be substrate. I mean, this is all possibly going to change by the end of it, but the idea is to have it so there's a section that they can grip and climb out, but also so I can put food down for them as well. So the idea behind having the island is to have that as an option, so I can actually target feed them, get them used to coming to the front possibly, depending how they are, because they tend to be either kind of okay with people or skittish. And everyone we've had so far has been skittish as hell, despite us trying to get them used to people. They just don't like it. But then again, they're inverts. They're, animal instincts kick in. Basically, preservation, big thing there. Run. So yeah, the idea is to get this slate down. So they've actually got like a... So basically, I've got a break point between the water and the substrate to stop the substrate dropping into the water and just basically dirtying the water up. If you get soil dropping into the water, obviously over time it'll diffuse. It'll just fall apart and end up turning the water all manner of funky colours, as well as releasing whatever's in the soil into the water. It'd be nice to keep it separate. And that is the plan. So having a little bit of a slate edge. I mean, I would like to get some river rocks, to be fair, river pebbles, things like that. But I figured slate. There we go. Pop the rest of the little bits in. Taking all that time to do that, and will it still be there? Will it still be there later? Will you even see it? Yeah. Because that's the other thing. A lot of the stuff that's being done now if any of it survives to the actual tank's final destination. A lot of it might not be visible at all, but it's nice to know that it's there, or that it's doing its job, like support or holding something up, or preventing something from falling in. There we go, that's me dropping the last pieces of slate somewhere to either fill a gap or just look a bit, from my point of view where I'm sat, look a bit more aesthetically pleasing instead of blank black foamy goodness. I've got a plan for that corner where I'm fiddling around at the minute. It'll help support that back rock as well, one that keeps dropping. But we'll see that later. So yeah, there you go. An initial setup. Basic substrate in, basic bits in. Don't like the look of that slate. Goodbye slate. Hello, funky shaped rock. And to be fair, I think the rock looks better than the piece of slate. So we'll just drop the slate somewhere else. Or just leave it out. Whichever. We'll leave it out. I don't think we need it. So here we go. What have we got next? What do we have? There are shadows moving, that means I'm doing something. As to what? Doop 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 doop. Aha! No, I've decided that rock needs spinning around. I'm not happy with it. I don't. Yeah, sitting there looking at it thinking, maybe. That definitely is moving there. Yeah, that definitely is shifting. Oh yeah, and there's some soil down here. Maybe I should put the soil where the soil should be. So I pick that up and totally ignore the other pieces. Go me. Attention to detail. Well, kinda. So, that said, here we are. Everything's as it was. Everything's as it should be. And, ooh, what's that? Something organic. Something that isn't rock. Something that's not stone. Here we go. We have a plant. There we go. It's one of those. Or rather, it's actually two of those. So we're just going to separate those off. Got an assortment of random, basically. Just generic, safe to use plants. They should do quite well in a reasonable humidity and a warm environment. And we'll just drop that there for the time being. Yeah, you'll be okay there. We'll drop you on the other side instead of just putting you both in the same spot. It's a shame I can't angle the camera up a little bit, because now that corner's been built up, you can't actually see it. But don't worry, you can see it later, just not through this view. And to be fair, it's just dropping some plants in. I mean, where they go is kind of hit and miss, and to be fair, as they're all placed in, I am fairly sure they will all have their positions changed. Especially seeing as at the minute all we have is the bare bones assembled. No water, no waterfall, no pool, no stream, nothing. So once they're in, a lot will change. A little succulent. Yeah, you'll do. You're harmless and non-poisonous. You'll be fine, and you'll do well in here. So we'll split you, and we'll drop you over here. Pop. For the time being, you can nestle there. Doop 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 doop. Look, just get the other ones. That's it. Just take those hands, put that slate back, and go pick up the other ones. Well done. Right. There are other plants. And yes, that's a bit of soil. Well done. Oh no, there's a bit of slate. Okay. Right. We do have more plants, but just next to me, where I've just moved that door, there is actually another tank. It's a 30 centimeter cube, and it's technically a spider tank. That's what they normally use them for. It's got a totally enclosed glass lid and a mesh strip along the back, which is where most of the breathing happens for the tank, most of the air exchange. And in there, we had the crabs one of the crabs initially, one group. But as we found, moisture does not escape the tank, even though we've got this nice sort of like 2 or 3 inch mesh across the entire back of the tank. Moisture just builds up in the tank because there's no proper exchange, there's no flow. So for spiders it's great because it keeps the moisture where they want it. It's warm, it's moist. But unfortunately it turned the fairly dry tank into a swamp very quickly. So the crabs were taken out, they were placed in a different environment. And I used it to plant seeds for the thing that's been placed towards the top of the screen at the moment. It's 5 different types of seeds. There's like a clover, there's a love grass, there's various other bits and bobs, and basically just planted all 5 to see what they look like, so I could decide which seeds to basically plant in. So what I'm doing is I'm adding those in as well, just to empty that tank, but also just to give a base, just a little bit of aesthetic niceness to it. It's just so that I can look at the tank and go, right, where that is there, that'd be cool if this was here, or that's there. I mean, these things don't have to survive. They are literally grasses for the most part. They're similar to cress, I suppose, or glossostigma, that kind of thing. They're different variants, and they're okay. They're okay. Not what I want in the tank primarily, but as something that's intermingled amongst other stuff to fill in gaps. Fair enough. So, if they survive, they survive. If they don't, they don't. If they don't survive, they get to add to the overall bio makeup of the soil. And here we go. Wood. That's got me wood. Here we go. 3 pieces of wood. There's a 4th piece, but it's big, and it's being used for the other tank, and it looks really cool. That corner, this is my plan for that corner. I'm going to use wood, because I think having like a nice big climbing section over there would be nice. So I reckon if we take a decent piece and wedge it appropriately, maybe not that piece. I don't know. Is that piece any good? Not so sure. Nah, maybe not that piece. No. Because that's standing straight up at the minute, and I kind of need something to be a little bit more angled, ideally. But there you go. But as you can see, the pieces of wood, they've got interesting shapes to them. Lots of knots and twists and just texture, I suppose. They are fairly heavy for what they are, and they're very, very tough. So the crabs and other insects and stuff that are going to be inside the tank, if they decide they're going to eat it, it's going to take a while. I think these things will not be chewed through in a rush. So longevity for the tank, and they'll just make it look nicer, get a bit more variance in there. But I'm not really loving that back piece of wood, to be fair. I reckon this front one might be a better idea. I'm fighting over there with little bits of rock. Because I'm trying to shore up that piece of foam. Because obviously, because of the excess weight on top now, the lacquer's trying to push its way through the foam. And the upshot of that is if I move those rocks, I need something to be put back pretty sharpish. Because if I move anything on top, it'll just push the base out. But yeah, what do you guys reckon to the pieces of wood? Do you reckon they look okay? Do you think they'll do the job, or do you think that it's kind of overkill? Admittedly, you can't see the actual tank in full. You can only see a squashed up vision from the side. So there's actually a lot more tank than it looks like from that angle. From that angle, it looks like it's probably almost not square, but it looks like it's not as deep as it looks. I mean, that doesn't look like a 3 foot length looking at it, but it is. And the width of the tank is only 18 inches. But looking at the camera like that, it looks like the width of the tank's 18 inches, the tank's only about 2 foot. But it's not. it's kind of deceptive. So there's a lot more room there than it looks. And to be fair, those little logs look like they're going to do the job nicely. That's me just deciding to shore up that piece that's splitting. Just rearranging the rocks again. Because this is the thing. Again, didn't have enough rocks to do it fully, but enough rocks to make it work. And then you get to this kind of stage when you start adding additional stuff and you realise things have to be moved around to make things stable and to make things work. So that's what we do. Like at the minute, I'm trying to shore that back piece of wood up and also shore up that foam at the same time. Now, back piece of wood's fine, but there's nothing shoring that foam anymore. So that needs to be resolved. So maybe we just move that piece of wood. Ooh, what am I doing? Maybe I'm considering it, maybe I'm not. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Maybe? No. Yes? No. Possibly. No, I'm adamant that rock's gonna go there, and I'm adamant that that piece of wood is staying. Or maybe I will change my mind. That's a nice upright piece, and it's actually cut so it's actually upright, whereas this is slightly chunkier and will fit that corner so much nicer. And I can lean it and have it so they can climb down and in. It's got a lot more grab holds on it, and it just looks nicer. It's just touching the front glass, which means it's anchored. It's touching the side. It's holding up that entire section there. So that's a much better choice. It's holding that rock in position, then we can put this other piece back in. And we're golden, I think. Ah, rock. Da, 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 da. Right, here we go. Right, so that's living there. Spin, spin, spin. In you go. Sure, that's up there. Nice. That looks much nicer, actually. I do like that. So yeah, we're going to keep that one there, I think. Oh, all of a sudden we have light. What happened there? I guess the sun came out. So, do you think it's coming along then? Do you think it's looking better? Do you think it's looking worse? Could it look worse? It's getting there. It's getting there slowly. But it will get there. And that's all that matters. Now we've got this piece that we pulled out the corner. It's a case of what to do with that. Now I reckon a piece of fallen wood, sort of like a fallen tree kind of idea. Maybe we should use it for that. I've got a plan for that piece. So I was thinking I could put it up there to get them to climb on top of the tower and sort out the pool up there. But that pool will most likely be sealed, so it's not really going to be that useful. I'm just trying to figure out a way this will sort of lock in. So that's got a nice overhang over the water now. But here we go. In with that. Well, stand it where it's supposed to be. But once it's got weight in it, it's not going anywhere. But at the minute, there we go. Oh, precarious island is precarious. Right, just move the bottom. That's it, move it out. Move it slightly forward so it sits where it needs to be. And then, there's our first bridge. Because we can just pop that piece of wood so it just touches the edge. So it's just resting just on that edge very lightly, because most of the weight for that wood's at the back. So that's our first branch onto that island. So we've got our first bridge. And we didn't crush the plant that was to the side. And then if we just manoeuvre some of the soil out of the way and we drop that log there like it's a fallen, like an old fallen tree sort of thing. There we go. That doesn't look too bad. I mean, to be fair, again, it does look much better from my point of view, where I'm sat looking at it. However, from that angle, you'll just have to bear with me and trust in the method. Yes. Don't know why I went around poking everything there. It's like, don't poke it, it might break. Stop poking it. There we go. Oh, there's a little piece of stone that had fallen down. I'll put it back in position somewhere on top to help stop other things falling down. So we just put the little bits of rock and slate that are lying around that still need to be used in and out of the way. So we've done that. Everything looks okay. Now, driftwood. Now, driftwood. Everyone knows what it is. I picked up. I picked up a fair bit of driftwood. By a fair bit, I mean I've got a massive box full. It was for projects. I'll just say that. Admittedly, this was the project it was for, but projects, because there will be more. They range in size from kind of like small finger all the way up to nearly half a metre. But the good thing is the smaller pieces, of which there are several hundred, are perfect for this, because I can just scatter them around. Now I could put more substrate in and build it up, but the thing is I don't want to build it up too high, and if I'm going to build it up I want one side of it to be higher. So if I build the right hand side of the tank, so the far left corner as you're looking at that, if I build that up, I can raise the substrate up over there and have stuff higher up that side, because on the left side we've got the tower, and I can't have the substrate getting higher than the tower because there's a risk of it falling in, especially when I come to if I have to basically maintain the pump, sort out leaks, things like that, leaks on the pipework and stuff. What I need to do is I need to be able to just pop that out. Now I can't do that if I've got substrate shored up against it, so I don't mind the plants being there because I can move the plants out of the way as needed, but I don't want substrate overflowing the tower. So far side I'll do that. But driftwood everywhere, fine. Just makes things look a little nicer. It's more aesthetic for people looking into the tank, but also for crabbos, it's more of an environment they can dig and hide. So as far as the hiding goes, they will burrow, and everywhere there's like a piece of driftwood that's been put down that may be anchored to another piece of driftwood, under another piece of driftwood or whatever. That solid structure, if they decide they're going to burrow, that'd form the roof of the roof of the tunnel. So they've got places they can just sort of go, oh well, this is solid, and I'm going to burrow into that, and above me is, I've got a plant overhanging me, and I've got a solid roof, so I can just sit in my little cave and come out when I want. So there you go. That's me just misting everything. Seeing as I've popped plants down, and there are seeds in there, and God knows what. Just give it a light misting. Here we go. Here come the seeds. Now these are the seeds of the smaller of the 5 plants that I test planted. They're like small clover. They're quite nice. Again, if they grow, bonus, because the idea is with all the other substrate and things put in later, like more wood, more plants, they'll start to grow, and they'll poke through between the other plants. And any seeds that don't grow, things in there will eat them. So, or they'll grow and rot down and become food for. Either way, it's all about bioavailability. So, if they grow so far and then they die out, then the insects in there will eat the detritus anyway, and then in turn the crabs will eat the insects. So, seeing as the tank is set up with the benefit of the crabs, having that in there is fine. I haven't put too many seeds in there because they don't grow really that fast, but in a week I'll know if they have actually grown. And I don't want to overflow the tank with one particular variety of plant. I want it to have a nice bit of variation, although there will be a lot of sphagnum. Just tossing a few more bits of driftwood in there, and we should be about done. Yeah, you'll do that. Just stick you in there, and you can go in that hole. Yeah, you'll do. So we have a lot of driftwood in there. Not a lot, just enough to start the tank off. So let's have a look. Poke, poke. Pokey poke, poke. Da 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 da. So we poked that bit there. Now what? Oh, we've got another. There we go. Another piece of driftwood. It's more of a chunk. It almost looks like a bit's broken off one of the 3 pieces of wood we put in, but they haven't. So there we go. The driftwood is for the most part in. Oh no, a little bit there, and another bit there. So we'll just close the door on this stage, and yes, there we go. That's what it looks like from my point of view after all of that. Just ignore the tub of sand on the left. So there's the tower, there's the little succulent, there's the bits and bobs, there's the stuck out piece of wood leading to the central island, which isn't there right now. I took that out so we can get a decent photograph of what's going on. That's what it looks like currently. But the right hand side, I'm going to build that up. I'm definitely going to put more substrate in there and build that up. But you can see the sort of glossostigma and other smaller crest-like plants that have grown up. The weird small clover, things like that. But like I say, they are not going to be the main plants. So, I hope you've enjoyed that. That was a look into what's going off, and thanks for watching. And sorry about the non-skips. Take care all.